And we are live. Okay, I'm just waiting for it to load. Okay, we're definitely live. Right. Hi guys, welcome to Bridging the Realm. This is another special live stream, which I'm sure you've probably seen already from my social media and from my chats. So I'm really happy and excited to welcome you guys to today's live stream, which will be about the topic of psychic abilities, medical intuition, and communicating with deceased loved ones. My guest is a very special guest to me because not only have I already interviewed her in a previous interview here on Bridging the Realm, but I also recently took one of her amazing online classes, which is about developing your psychic abilities, learning how to do medical intuition, called Angelic Attendance. So it's super fascinating. It's been over the course of 4 weeks where we were learning how to develop our own intuition and psychic abilities, how to learn to communicate with deceased loved ones, with people who have passed over, who are in spirit, and some other really incredible things that I never ever thought will be possible to do. But in 4 weeks, I realized that it's actually very real and possible to discover this side of ourselves. So just to tell you a little bit more about my guest, Julie Ryan, she is a psychic and a medical intuitive who for over 25 years now, and she actually started off as an inventor and an entrepreneur, inventing a number of globally used surgical devices, and she also founded 9 companies across the medical and long-term care industries. So spread out through quite a few industries there. So she has a world of knowledge that I'm sure we can all tap into today. And she settled into her spirituality and psychic abilities for over the last 25 years, where she also has written a book called Angelic Attendance, What Really Happens as we transition from this life into the next, and her other book called Angel Messages for Kids, which are fascinating books, and they explain all about what happens to us, what happens to people when they transition from the physical life to the non-physical dimension, to the spirit. And I definitely recommend it for anyone who wants to learn about what happens to our loved ones when they pass over, because this is not how it ends for us. There's definitely an afterlife, and it's really helpful for anyone who wants to understand more about this side of life to definitely look into that. So I can't recommend it enough. And also Julie does an amazing podcast every Thursday called Ask Julie Ryan, where people from all over the world call in and they ask questions about, again, wanting to connect with their loved ones, wanting to get a medical scan. Maybe they feel something in their body and they want Julie to kind of tune into that, or they have some sort of question to do with psychic abilities or anything to do with this realm of reality. So it's a really fascinating to listen to these conversations and how everything works. So I definitely recommend you guys to tune into it whenever you can. So that's Ask Julie Ryan, and you can find that on her website, askjulieryan.com. So Julie, thank you so much for being with me today. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. What a treat to be with you. You are one of my favorite people on the planet. You know that.
Oh, thank you. So are you. So are you. And it's really amazing how we found each other. And it just, since then, we kind of just connected, and it's just been so amazing. And like I was just explaining, I literally just finished taking your class on angelic attendance, which was absolutely fascinating. And it was just really incredible. And this is kind of a lead on from that, because I thought it was so interesting for me to kind of learn some of these ways in which we can tune more into our psychic abilities, our intuition, which is all natural to everyone, but a lot of people kind of don't really realize that. So we just surpassed this amazing ability that is so useful. So I thought it would be really interesting to just have a discussion about it, and for you to maybe explain a little bit more about how you got started, and what kind of led you into this world. Yeah, so for anyone who wants to know, let us know how first 25 years ago, you were creating surgical devices, which is completely different from anything that you're kind of doing now. But again, it's in a way related because it's to do with the medical community, medical field. But tell me a bit about that and how, what was that like, you know, doing that to transitioning to doing something that is so drastically different?
Well, it's been a fascinating journey. I tell people I'm a businesswoman and an inventor who learned how to do woo-woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. And that's, as you know, as you learned in the class, we all have the ability, we all come in with intuitive abilities and we all use them. We just don't know we're doing it. Desi, we've all had situations where we think of somebody and then the next day we get a call from them or a text from them or an email, or we run into them in a restaurant or somewhere and we think, oh, what a coincidence. I just was thinking of you and here you are. Well, it's your psychic ability, your intuitive ability at work. And my feeling about all this work that I do is it's another skill set that we all have the ability to do, come in with it, and we can enhance it. And it helps us live our lives of joy and purpose and just fulfillment in a way that perhaps other ways that we're looking for information don't give us as much of a sense of satisfaction. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, this adds a sense of joy and a sense of really almost magical
Mm.
things that can happen that just help you live a life of joy. And people walk around when they have these skills and they say, I'm just happy most of the time. And it's not for any particular reason. I'm just happy. Well, you're doing what your spirit's path is, and you're vibrating at the level where spirit is, which is feels good. It's fun and it's joyful.
Yeah.
So how I got into this was, as you mentioned, I'm an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world. And I have founded 9 companies in 5 different industries. So medical, natural gas, advertising, long-term care, and data privacy and security, which are not related at all.
Yeah.
And so I read a book, someone gave me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit by a woman named Carolyn Mace, who called herself a medical intuitive. And I thought, what the heck is that? I'd never heard that term before. And I read her book and I wanted to know more. And she was able to use energy fields to tell what was going on with somebody from a health standpoint. And here I am inventing devices to help people heal. And I'm thinking, okay, I want to know more about this. So I found another book back then, before you were born. We didn't have the internet yet, and we didn't have Amazon. It hadn't been founded yet. And so I did the old fashioned thing and I went to a bookstore to see what else was there that perhaps I could find. And I found a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan, who's a former NASA physicist. She was a rocket scientist, literally.
Wow.
And she took very complex quantum physics principles and distilled them into understandable language that a non-scientific person like me could understand. And she talked about utilizing energy fields to diagnose and help facilitate healing. Again, I wanted to know more, so I called her school and I said, do you have anyone in my area perhaps that's teaching this stuff? And lo and behold, she did. So I studied with a woman for 6 years. She's still in my life. She's still a mentor. And now I teach people how to do this. And certainly as we advance, as our civilizations and technology advance, something that took me 6 years to learn, you found out real quickly, we can do it in 4 weeks, a couple of hours, and people from all over the world can take it. You got to speak English because I don't speak any other languages. We and see, that's about it. But I've parlayed what I've learned, excuse me, over doing this work for more than 25 years into a class where we all can do this. And it's so what I find, Desi, and I know you and I have discussed this before, so many people who are teaching woo-woo, I call it woo-woo, are saying, okay, you can be a medium, or you can be a medical intuitive, or you can be a healer, or you can do all of it. Once you learn to tap into spirit, you're in universal consciousness. You can take it anywhere you want. You can help people heal. energetically. You can scan and help animals heal. You could talk to dead people. You could talk to spirits attached to people who are still alive. You could do past life stuff. You can tell how close to death somebody is. I mean, it's all, you found that, right?
Yeah, it's like everything is accessible to you now. It's like, wow, I can do
Yeah.
anything.
Well, it's like if you teach somebody to read, they can learn how to access information that's in the written word. If you teach somebody how to be able to connect to spirit and validate the information that they get,
Mm.
my goodness, every thought that's ever been thought, you have access to. Every thought that's getting ready to be thought, you have access to. It's just another amazing set of skills to help us live a life of joy.
Totally. Yeah. And like you said, it makes everything so much more magical. And, because I think for me personally, regular life is just quite mundane and boring. There's no mystery behind it. But with this, it's like, wow, I can do so many things. So,
Well, and we all go through periods in our lives where it just feels like it's a slog, and we're thinking there's got to be more to this.
yeah.
But these skills that we have the ability that we all come in with, it's learning to enhance them, lets us look at things from a different perspective. And when we're living a life of joy and purpose, that's when the inspiration comes in. That's when the magic happens in all areas of our life. Our love life, financial, opportunities. We meet people, the people we need to show up when we need them. And we think, oh my gosh, there's no way I could have predicted this. This person just showed up and it was amazing. The other thing I think, and if you go back to the first week of the class, how the class works, everybody, is the first hour is lecture and discussion. The second hour is practicum. So we're practicing, right?
Yeah.
In that first week, we did remote viewing. And I limit the class to 12 people, but I think you guys were all amazed that you were able to really do this remote viewing thing right out of the chute with no training.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think we're pretty fascinated that we could guess so many, we could, see so many things with using, our
We're
intuition.
intuition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah,
It's
that was
fun.
pretty fascinating. Yeah, no, I think you're right, and it's when you start receiving these, getting these synchronicities and sort of these coincidences that are kind of too good to be true, and you start to see that there's something much bigger than just us. There's like the universe that is kind of doing things for you and like leading you, guiding you, and there's all these other things that are kind of helping you in your direction, especially when you feel lost and when you don't know what to do or where to go, and you start to get these little bits of information from here, from there, and then all of a sudden you just see the synchronicities everywhere and you're like, wow, it's amazing. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's been pretty special for me to kind of allow these to kind of come into my life and just trust that whatever's coming in is coming in for a reason and it's
Yeah.
leading somewhere.
And
Yeah.
when you feel bad, to have the skill sets to be able to get out of it.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean you have to love everybody and love every situation, but it means that you accept the situation that you're in and you know it's unfolding purposely and perfectly, and it's benefiting you in some way, and it helps you look at things from a different perspective, which in turn helps you get that inspiration that comes in that allows us to say, okay, well, I hadn't thought of that. Let me take that step, and that leads to another step, and then you'll get another inspiring thought, and that's when the abundance and the magic happens,
Yeah.
and everybody has the ability to do it.
Yeah. Totally. Yes, I completely agree. And especially now during this time that we've kind of been, locked in and have to stay at home, it's been such a perfect time to do this kind of stuff, to really get in touch with yourself and your inner world and learn how we're connected to this bigger world that is outside of us, to the bigger consciousness of life. So it's been really interesting to do this during this specific period and just become so much more sensitive to everything that's going on around us and connected with ourselves, with our inner world as well as the outer world. So it's been really interesting to do this during this specific time, especially. Yeah, and I'm definitely starting to be more trusting of whatever is going on. It's happening for a reason, and I just need to be patient and just trust that you know it's just gonna, whatever I want, it's gonna happen. But I just need to trust and be kind of open to that. And yeah.
Well, and I think we're all hardwired for fear as a species. We're looking for that saber-toothed tiger that's going to come around the corner and eat us for lunch,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And things that are happening to us that we think are really dangerous and it feels awful, we have to be able to differentiate what's a true fear that's going to harm us and what's something that we're making up that's an irrational fear. And once we can differentiate between the two, I think that is such a big part of being able to live a life of joy. And everybody, as I mentioned and we've discussed already, everybody has the ability to communicate with spirit. And how you do it is you just ask a question or make a statement, and then spirit communicates telepathically, as you know. And so the answer is going to come in as a thought in your head, and it's going to feel like your thought. But the key is when it comes in within a second, as fast as you can snap your fingers, that's spirit responding. When we think about it for more than a couple of seconds, that's our brain making stuff up. And it's really important to remember that spirit's very literal. So you want to, if you're asking for guidance, you want to be super specific about the guidance you ask. For instance, will I enjoy watching the movie this weekend? Versus, will I enjoy watching the name of the movie, when you're going to watch it, and how you're going to watch it? You know, those are two very different ways to ask the same question. In your mind, you know what you're asking, but spirit's really literal. They're always going to give you the correct answer. But how applicable the information is, the guidance is that you get, is going to be determined on how you ask the question. So be super specific and keep refining it down. And we all can do that now. Everybody listening, everybody that sees this, we can all do it. We do it now, but we just don't trust the information we get.
Yeah, it's so interesting. That actually made me realize how often I get these insights from, spirit, but I just disregard them because I just think it's my own mind and I'm just going crazy or something. But yeah, it made me realize that we get these insights all the time, but when we start to think about it, and then that's when your brain starts to get in the way and you're like, oh, but yeah. So that was something I found really interesting, but also quite hard because it's very hard to ask something without you thinking about it and having to catch that split second when the answer does come in, and to differentiate that between you just overthinking something and you thinking about it. So yeah, that was interesting.
But you're finding too, I know you are, that the more you do it, the easier it gets. The more you do it, the more validation you get that you're receiving information that's really applicable. And it's just snowballs. The more you do it, it becomes a habit. And it's just, you're still going to get, I mean, after all these years, going on 3 decades of doing this work, every once in a while, I'll get something and I'll think, seriously, this is really it. But I've just done it for so long, Desi, with tens of thousands of people around the world, that I say what I get. And I would say 99% of the time, the person will say, yeah, that applies because boom, boom, boom. There was a woman I was talking to last week, and her energy field, I'm like a human MRI. And as you know, most of the work that I do is medical intuitive, because that's what people ask for help on. And I was working with a private client, and I was seeing that her energy field, and I connected to someone, and it's like I'm a human MRI or X-ray. I can see what's going on inside somebody's body in my mind's eye. And I said, you're full of mold. Where have you had mold exposure? I said, you've had a tremendous amount of mold exposure. And she couldn't think of anything. She said, my house isn't moldy. My office is not moldy. I don't know where it's coming from. I got an email from her later in the day, Desi, and she said, 5 years ago, when I was in graduate school, I was abroad for 5 months. I came back. My car was full of mold. I was a struggling graduate student. I didn't have any money to get a new car, so I cleaned it out as much as I could, but I drove the car for 2 years.
Oh boy.
If somebody's had tremendous mold exposure, it can take years for it to get out of their body. So she said, I completely forgot till I was talking with a friend. And she said, well, duh, your car, remember when you were in grad school? So that's just validation over the years of, I say what I get, even if it doesn't make sense to me at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I remember you speaking about this during one of our classes, and it was really, it was interesting again because, yeah, I've seen so many people, and personally, when I've gone to sessions to see like a psychic or someone, and they'll say something to me, and I'll be like, no, that doesn't really, no, that doesn't make sense. And then I'll think about it for like a week, and then something will drop in, and I'll be like, oh yeah, yeah, you're right.
Because you're looking at it from a different perspective,
Mm,
that kind of thing. But I think it's important to remember too that things that have happened are set, things that are happening now are set in this moment. Things that are happening in the future are fluid because there are a bazillion variables that can come in that can affect an outcome.
yeah.
Your free will, somebody else's free will. What's the weather? Is there a global pandemic? It's just endless. And there's no way that our human minds can predict what's going to happen. I can tell you, this is what I'm getting right now
Yeah.
for what's going to be a future event, but it may change because there are a
Mhm.
lot of variables that can come in that can affect the
Yeah.
outcome.
And I think that's, I mean, that's, it's kind of scary, but it's also a good thing because it lets us, it allows us to see that we do have the free will to change whatever it is that we don't want in our life. So it's quite nice to know that, that not everything is predestined or set for our future. Yeah.
Right. So things that have happened in the past, though, we have the ability to look at them from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And that can change how we perceive things, and that can change how we go forward, what our beliefs are. Do we have a belief that is false based on something that's happened in the past? And when we look at it from a different perspective, does that affect our belief?
Mm, yeah. Yes, I totally agree. It's yeah, our perspective on the situation can make such a huge difference. And it's yeah, once you change your perspective, the whole picture can change, and yeah, how you see that whole idea. But tell me a little bit about this idea that we are spirits in a physical body. And I remember the very first lesson that we had, you used this picture of a fish in a bag full of water, and that's such a good visual interpretation of, you know, what actually happens is how we have our spirit, and then the body is inside of that spirit. So tell me a bit about that, and how do you see it from your perspective?
We're all spirits attached to a body having a human experience. Most of us have heard that line before, and I think it's very applicable. But the thing that most people don't understand, or maybe haven't been taught, is that the spirit is the main part of us. It's the everlasting part of us. And our body goes inside the spirit. Both are made of energy, but the body is inside the spirit. And then if you think about looking at a religious picture of somebody, Jesus, the Virgin Mary, Buddha, somebody that's considered, you know, like a spiritual leader or a spiritual picture, oftentimes they're depicted with a halo around their head or around their whole body. That's their energy field. It's their spirit. It's their aura. It's all the same thing. And so I think that the artists of long ago could see that, and that's why they painted that. And then just over the ages, we've said, oh, that's a religious figure, or that's somebody who's holy, when in essence, we all have it, which means we're all holy, right? We're all a spark of the divine. So the spirit and the body are both made of energy. The spirit is the power source for the body, which is why when somebody dies and their body and their spirit separate, the body doesn't work anymore because it doesn't have an energy source. And then the container, as I view it, Desi, is like a big plastic bag made from very thin, stretchy plastic wrap. And if you think about an analogy of a goldfish in a bag of water, when you go to the pet store and they put the goldfish in a bag of water so you can get it home, the goldfish represents our body, the water represents our spirit, because again, the body's inside the spirit, and the plastic bag represents our energy field membrane, but it's all holographic. So when I'm doing a medical scan on someone, I always look in their energy field membrane to see if there's a tear or hole in it, and it's allowing an energy leak. Energy leaks are caused by an emotional event from this lifetime or a past lifetime that causes an energy block, a la Eastern medicine, acupressure, acupuncture, trying to clear the block to get the chi to move, that concept. And it causes a tear or a hole in the energy field membrane, allowing an energy leak, which always precedes any kind of medical condition.
Yeah.
So back to the goldfish in a bag of water analogy. If you think about it, if that bag of water has a pinhole in it and water is draining out a drop at a time, for a long time, that fish is going to be just fine. But when enough water drains out over time, that fish is going to be in trouble because it needs the water to swim. Same for us. We need energy to survive. And I believe that's what happens to the human body. We have these tears or holes in the energy field membrane over long periods of time. And our bodies start to deteriorate as a result. So we fix the energy field membrane, the body's allowed to work on full power, and the body can regain health and maintain health. Another analogy I like to use for this is if your car's broken and you take it in and you fix the radiator, that's all fine and good. But if the battery isn't working, what's the point? That car's still not going to run, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with the body. If we have a leak in the energy field membrane, we can fix body parts all day long. But if it doesn't have enough power to work properly, disease and illness are going to set in. So we fix the membrane, the healing integrates into the body, and people are able to regain their health and maintain their health.
Wow, I found that so interesting, and the fact that it's always down to an emotional trauma, an emotional cause that caused that leakage in the first place. So it just shows how important it is, for us to just be in charge of our emotions and to clear whatever doesn't need to be there. And I think that was really interesting.
An interesting point about that, if I may add one other thing, Desi, is that oftentimes people will think of the most intense event that's happened. What's been the most horrific event that they've experienced? And certainly some people have been through some really awful stuff in their life. And it's not always that. It's usually a lot of times it's something that's more simplistic, like somebody called you a bad name when you were little and it hurt your feelings. Yeah. And we look at that now and we think, well, that was no big deal. But it's a big deal to you when you're 3 and it happens, in your little world when you're 3. But the thing that I find is that we want to remove that kernel of the energy block. It reminds me of a planter's wart on the bottom of your foot. Have you ever had one of those?
Yeah.
They hurt like heck, right? And they're a cone that grows into the foot. And in order for it to heal, you got to get the seed or the kernel of that wart out of the foot in order for it to heal. Same with this. Once we get where that block started, the kernel, it eradicates all pent up emotional energy that's caused the membrane to rupture. And it's like, why do I want to go to the most traumatic event? I want to get it all out of there.
Yeah.
So we go to the kernel and we remove that, and it works amazingly well.
Yeah, I've also found that from just other research that I've read about the emotional causes of the emotional symptoms of the emotional causes of physical symptoms. It's normally that original trauma where everything stems from, isn't it? It can be, normally it's something that did happen in childhood, because that's our earliest, when we start to get socialized and everything starts to kind of go wrong. So
it's not always childhood though, what I see. And I'll do a medical scan on probably a couple thousand people a year between my weekly podcast and also I usually get about 10 people on a week that ask questions, and then private clients. And it's not always something from childhood. It can be, but oftentimes it's adulthood too. It's when they're in college or young adulthood or even midway through their lives. It's fascinating what comes up. The other thing that's interesting too to note is that it can be something from a past life.
Yeah.
And that's really fun when it's a past life thing, because we'll get what the year was, where you lived, and what was going on. And then we'll correlate what happened in that past life with what's going on in your current life. So it's something that we've brought through from a past life. And oftentimes we can corroborate the information with online data that, okay, this really happened in 1794 in Marseille, France, and this was going on. And a lot of the time we'll get somebody's name and historic documents saying, okay, they lived in this city in 1794 in Marseille, and my client will go Google it, and they'll come up with a record of the person's name and where they lived. And it's wild. It's so much fun.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it's so weird how it does relate to your current life as well. Because I remember when I had a session with you, you picked up on a past life that was very much related to what I was going through at the time. So that was really interesting how it works. Yeah. And it kind of shows you, um, it allows you to see your current situation or whatever you might be going through a different perspective as well. So kind of it makes it a little bit more clearer as to why you've been feeling that way.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it identifies where the block started, and then we eradicate that. Fun story. There's a client that I have who's a corporate executive here in the US, and he's the CEO of a huge publicly traded company. And we got for one of his past lives that he was a British naval admiral, and he was in charge of the Atlantic Fleet, and we got his name, and there was some big naval battle that he was famous for. And so we got all this information about him, and my client Googled him. Oh my gosh, there was so much information. Now, let me tell you, I don't know British naval history at all. I know Dunkirk because I saw the movie, but I don't know British naval history. I mean, I barely know American naval history. And so it was so much fun. It's always fun when we can get that corroborating
wow.
information,
Yeah.
with historical documents.
Yeah, and it must be such a yeah, and also confirms that you also were right about what you were picking
That's
up.
right.
So that's pretty amazing. Yeah. No, it's really interesting how it works. And one thing I remember from the very beginning that you were saying and how important it is raising your vibration, and the importance of raising your vibration. And it's only when we raise that vibration that we can begin to communicate with spirit and get all this information. So tell me a bit about that, because I found that really interesting. And of course, it's not something that your regular person will be aware of, because we only think that we only have one way of being. We're not aware that we can actually change our frequency, and our vibration. So tell me a bit about that and how it works and why it works.
Well, everything's made of energy, whether we can feel something. I'm sitting in my office in my big cherry desk, and it feels very heavy and very solid, and it is, but I know it's energy, and it's just vibrating more slowly than the energy we're using to communicate. Obviously, we're communicating. I can see you, I can see your beautiful face. And I'm in the southern part of the US in Birmingham, Alabama, and you're in London. That's a long way away, but it's like you're sitting right here in my office talking to me. So everything's made of energy, and energy vibrates at different speeds and different frequencies. Every spirit has its own frequency. Every thought has its own frequency. Thoughts don't originate in our heads. So what I teach, and what you now have the ability to do, is I transfer the super high level of energy at working with spirit to you and to my other students. And that allows you to tap into spirit and go wherever you want. It's like you're on the highway, and then you can take it wherever you want to go. Most people don't tap into it with any regularity because they don't know it exists. And if you haven't felt it before, you don't even know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing, is that being able to access that vibration. And as you heard me ad infinitum in the class, that 90% of it was you guys being able to swim in that high vibration for 8 hours. So now it's just natural to you. You're able to reach it because you know what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I think that meditation is a way to increase vibration for people. Prayer certainly is an age-old way that people will do that. But I think when people pray, most of us, we ask and we ask and we ask, but we don't feel like we get answers.
Yeah.
When you're able to tap into this super high vibration level, you're able to get answers on anything that you want, anything that's ever been thought, anything that's never been thought yet. It doesn't matter. I have a communication degree. I'm an inventor of surgical devices. How does that work? How does a girl with a communications degree have a company in the natural gas business, in the energy industry for 11 years? I was pulling in information that I was able to access. That was before I knew how to do woo-woo. I mean, my goodness, imagine had I had that information or that capability. And now I teach, and this work that I do now is the most fun, the most rewarding, the most satisfying blast I've ever had in my life of anything I've ever done. I get to meet amazing people like you from around the world. I get to help people when they have a loved one who's dying. I help people who've been to many doctors and gotten many diagnoses and they still have the same symptoms. I help heal them. I help pets. It's amazing the
Yeah.
opportunities that abound. And this has just been an amazing experience for me over the past 5 years. I sold my medical device manufacturing company 5 years ago and released my first book, Angelic Attendants, that you mentioned. And it's all snowballed from there, but it's just a blast. I love it. I love it. It is the most fun thing I've ever done.
Well, you can definitely tell that, when I'm talking to you or in our class, you always have this amazing, really amazing energy around you, and it makes me excited and it makes me want to do it, and everyone else as well. So it's been really, really fun, like being part of these classes and just, just like being part of this. For all of us to see how everyone is improving by each week, and you can see. And I remember speaking to one of the girls from the class as well, and we were both saying how since we started doing the class, we can see things changing. Like for example, I've been getting a lot of ringing in the ears, and that's one of the symptoms that I think you get when your energy is really high. And I've been getting so many synchronicities in the last 4 or 5 weeks, and it's just been wow. Things are just kind of stacking up, and you just think something's really going on here.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and you live a life of joy, and you walk around and you go, well, I'm just happy all the time. And people say, why are you so happy all the time? You go, oh, I just am happy. It's because you're at this high vibration. And that's where abundance comes in. People say, well, I'm interested in financial abundance. This gives you abundance, period. Financial, love life, relationships, yeah, I mean, opportunities, whatever. And it's just a new way of looking at life and experiencing life that I think that's what our spirits come in to experience is just a life of joy and fun. And when we know what we don't like and we don't want, that's how we create from that. If we know what we don't want, then we know what we do want and we create it. And when you're at a high vibration, it just flows. It doesn't take effort and struggle and all of that most of us have spent our lives trying to do to make things happen. It's way more fun and way easier and way more beneficial to just allow our guidance to lead us and it flows. And I think you're experiencing that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I can attest to that and to that working. And you're right. Like I've one of the main things that I've noticed is that when you are in that state, in the high, vibration, high frequency, everything just feels so much easier, and everything kind of just flows. You don't have to try so hard to, like do something. It's just because you're just going with the flow. You're just kind of following what feels good, and and as you do that, it's kind of like everything just starts to kind of like line up, and you get the synchronicities, you get numbers, and just people popping out of nowhere saying words that mean something to you or the situation that you're in, or yeah, so everything just becomes so much easier, and it's like wow, it's just so nice to live like that.
Well, and to know that you can't make a mistake. None of us can ever make a mistake. And I think we hold ourselves back because we're afraid we're going to make a mistake on something. And we can't make a mistake because everything always unfolds perfectly. And when we go through something that we think is awful or even horrific, if we look at it from a perspective of everything's unfolding perfectly and this is benefiting me in some way, and then you move onto whatever the next inspiring thought is. And the key is to take action.
Yeah.
When you get those inspiring thoughts, you get a thought to do something and then you don't do anything. And we've all had situations like that where we get a thought on something and we don't follow that thought and we regret it.
Yeah.
We've all had that situation. But I also find at this stage in my life is if I'm not doing something that I'm getting guided to do, it'll keep circling back. And so now if I'm getting the same thought over a period of time where it's 3 or 4 times it's coming in, I'm going to say, okay, I need to pay attention to this. I need to look into this. I need to do something along these lines. Like writing my children's book, The Angel Messages for Kids. I kept getting inspiration to write a children's book. And then it's a picture book. It's a children's picture book. I have one here. Can I show it?
Yes.
It's really cute.
Oh, wow.
Hey, by the way, we sent one to Fergie. So I want Fergie to read it on her show. You know how she has her story time with Fergie or whatever it is on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah,
so I sent one to her. This is my favorite illustration, and it's talking about you can still communicate with your loved ones even when they're deceased. Is that darling? My illustrator's she's originally from the UK. She went to the London Art Institute and she lives in Ireland now. But didn't she do a great job?
It's
I kept getting inspired to write a children's book, and I kept having moms tell me, can you come up with something that I can explain to my small child, what happens when somebody dies? Because we may be at visiting hours at the funeral home and their body's in a casket, and we're telling little Jimmy that his granddad is in heaven, and little Jimmy's going, no, he's not. He's asleep over there in that weird bed. Or kids that have know things from past lives, and there's no way they could know them. One of my favorite stories is I have a friend whose grandson, Walter, is that right? Walter, they call him Walter. He's so cute. When he was 4, he asked his mom and he said, he told his mom, he said, you're my favorite of all my mommies. And she said, well, hey, I'm your only mommy. And he said, no, Mom, you're my favorite of all my mommies. And she said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, Mom, babies are born to a mommy and a daddy, and then they grow up and they die, and they're born to a new mommy and daddy, and then they grow up and they die. And that happens a lot of times, and you're my favorite of all my mommies. And so she's on the phone with her mom going, you won't believe what Walt said. And her mom's calling me going, you won't believe what Walt said. How do we explain this? And then also how small children talk about that they're being visited by perhaps a deceased loved one's spirit, and they know information about that loved one. Maybe it was a grandfather or a great grandfather, and the parent say, well, I'm not seeing them and I didn't know that, but they'll ask family members, did that happen? And it's right. And this child can't read yet, and there's no way this kid could know this stuff. So I had so many moms say, can you please write a book? And after I got that so many times, Desi, I thought, okay, I'll do that. I promise you, I had that thought. I told my husband, I said, I'm being led to write a children's book. Within 10 minutes, I had a phone call with a woman who's head of this huge internet company we all know and we all use every day. She's head of early childhood learning. And I said to her, I'm being inspired to write a children's book. She said, send me the manuscript and I'll review it. Talk about synchronicity.
Yeah. Perfect synchronicity. Wow.
Right.
I love how that works. Yeah. And just as we were saying before, everything just kind of starts to flow, and you don't even need to, it doesn't feel like you're doing any work, because you're just doing you're just following the signs and whatever it is that you're getting. But yeah, I've also found that I found that especially now that I'm a lot more aware and conscious of the signs that I get, something will kind of keep coming back to me, and then someone on the outside will actually verify it by saying something completely unrelated, but somehow it's related to what I'm thinking about. Or this happens to me a lot, especially now. I'm walking down the street, and the thing I'll be thinking about, someone will say a word that is related to that. Or it's just so weird how things just happen like that. So yeah.
So you don't have to go to Hogwarts to learn how to do this stuff. You can do it online, right?
Exactly.
I do, when I come to the UK though, I do want to go see where Hogwarts would,
Oh yeah. I actually haven't been, so we can go together.
Okay, I would love that. I would love it. I want to see that, and I want to see Highclere Castle where they filmed Downton Abbey.
Okay, we can do a day trip out of it.
Yeah, I'm watching the new Julian Fellows one, My Husband and I, Belgravia. The new.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. And I didn't know that was a real area that is in London.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I'll need to see that too. We'll just plan our trip on my TV viewing.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll plan like a whole week of things to do.
I think Julian Fellows and J.K. Rowling have done amazing things for the tourism industry in the UK with
Oh,
just
yeah.
these shows that they've done, and all these people around the world that have watched them, and
Mm,
now they want to come see it in person.
definitely. And just the magic that they've created by, inventing these amazing stories. So yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, but well, as you were speaking about, diseased loved ones, I find it really important, especially during the time that we're in now, to, for people to kind of maybe open up their mind a little bit more to this idea that we don't, death doesn't just mean that you just disappear into thin air and that's it. That's the end of your existence, because that is such a, on whatever level you look at that, it just feels so wrong. I mean, even before I got into spirituality and started learning about what happens in life after death, I knew on some level, or at least it felt to me like there is so much more to the picture than we can see. And obviously, you being a psychic for so many years, you able to communicate with people who have passed away, you know that for a fact. So you know that we continue to live. So tell me, what have you seen from how can this help us or help people to understand better our lives, and just to be a bit more in tune with the reality of actually what's going on in the real world, in after this physical reality.
Well, I think people are so afraid to die because we've been inundated throughout the millennia with you're going to go to hell or you're going to go to heaven. Our pastor at our Catholic church that we go to, and he's an Irish fellow. His name's John Fallon. I just love him, Father John Fallon. He said from the pulpit one time, he said, people are so afraid to die because they don't know if they're going to fly or fry. I thought that was perfect. We were all cracking up when he said that. But I think it's been bastardized throughout the ages by cultures and civilizations and religions. And what's the number one motivator of people is fear. So it's been used to control the masses. And what I see and what I've been led to teach people about is that we're surrounded by angels and deceased loved ones and the spirits of our deceased pets when we pass. It's a glorious thing. It's not scary. Is it heart-wrenching for those being left behind? Absolutely. Absolutely. In most instances, when we have a loved one who's dying. However, when we're going through that with somebody who's dying, what does it do? It triggers our fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be there myself one day. And what's it going to be like? And that's why I was led to write Angelic Attendants, because one of my main spirit guides is a dead pope named Pope Clement VI. And when he showed up, the first time he showed up, he always appears in his whole pope outfit, does he? It's hilarious. And I say to him, Clement, I know who you are after all these years. You don't have to wear the hat. And he says, it's just what I do. He's just so funny. But he said to me, he said, one of the things for you to do in this lifetime is to educate the world about what happens when people die, because they're so afraid. And this was a long time ago, before I had gotten into, I knew how to do these skills, but I hadn't come out of the closet yet about it, if you will. So I said to him, I'm not doing that. I'm a businesswoman. People are going to think I'm crazy. And he said, yeah. Well, everything you've done in business has been to prepare you for what's happening, what you're going to do with this. So it took me a lot of years before I got the courage. I call it golden ovary courage. Guys have brass balls, women have golden ovaries. I got the golden ovary courage to be able to release this stuff. And now this book is being used. Here, I have a copy right here, Angelic Attendants. Now it's being used around the US anyways. I haven't heard about any abroad yet, but it's being used in Sunday school classes of all denominations. Episcopal, Methodist, Lutheran, Baptist, whatever. It's being used in synagogues. And so Pope Clement, when he said, you're just supposed to do this, I Googled him after he left. When he showed up, I was basically like, can I help you? Why are you here, basically? Well, I found out, Desi, that he was in office during the Black Plague. And when 2/3 of Europe died, and he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And I'm thinking, okay, Ryan, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, I didn't know there was a Pope Clement, let alone what his history was. So he has really prompted me to do this to help take the fear out. And in the book, it not only talks about how we're surrounded by angels and deceased loved ones, and there's a pattern that happens, but it talks. There are many stories in there that are really heartwarming, and I've had people say, I didn't expect the book to be a page turner, but I couldn't put it down because of all the stories and how it helped people get in touch with, okay, there really is more than just this human life, and we can still communicate with our deceased loved ones, and it brings such a sense of peace and really a glorious component to the equation of losing a loved one.
Yeah, no, totally. That's such a, and I can attest to, how helpful this information is for someone who has had someone pass away from their family, and just having that, someone tell you, I know you're in pain, but they haven't gone away. They are still there, they still exist in another dimension. And just that in itself can just make such a difference to someone's life, because, then now you know that you can communicate with that person. You can tell them the things that you never had the chance to say to them. Maybe if they died in an accident and you never had the chance to tell them so many things. I mean, that can save someone's life, from depression, from basically not having a proper life. So yeah, I
Right.
think that makes a huge difference. And I know in your book, you have so many examples, and you describe the way in which, someone, if they're transitioning in a slow way, how it happens. And that's so interesting to see the transitioning phase, and to know that they're not by themselves, and to know that they have their own family on the other side waiting for them, and angels waiting for them, and their pets waiting for them, so
No,
it's so amazing to know that. Yeah.
I call it the Welcome to Heaven Committee. When,
Mm.
all these people, and it's a riot because I can say, okay, there's this woman and she's got white hair and her hair's in a bun and she has on this little sweater with pearl buttons, and they'll say, oh, that's Grandma Ann. Or I'll say, there's somebody else. When my own mother was dying, there was a priest spirit that was in the room who'd been dead for 25 years. And my mother had been the principal of a Catholic grade school that my siblings and I attended. And there's Father Byrne's spirit. I hadn't thought of Father Byrne in 25 years since he passed. And I'm thinking, well, of course he's there to welcome my mother. My mother worked for him for 20 years and they were very close. And so I found it so remarkable with my own mother. That was the first time I saw this stuff. And I thought, oh my God, am I hallucinating? Am I having a midlife crisis? What the heck is this? And then I've seen it just countless times with other families and helped other families. But we go through what I call the 12 phases of transition, and it's the configuration of how angels and deceased loved ones are there. And we all go through it, whether we die instantly, like in the case of a homicide or a suicide, or if we die over a long period of time. There was a woman that called into my show for 2 years, and her father had Alzheimer's, and he took 2 years to die. He was in phase 11 of 12 for 2 years, and she kept saying, my family's like, okay, Dad, we're ready. Whenever you're ready, I mean, it gets to the point where you just don't want him to suffer anymore. He wasn't cognitively aware of what he was doing, but his family certainly was during that time. But another interesting point about the 12 phases of transition is at the end of every Catholic funeral and every Episcopal or C of E funeral, they say a prayer that's called In Paradisum. And it talks about how the angels and your loved ones will greet you and lead you into paradise. And so I believe, Desi, that prayer originated, well, I did research on it for my book. I found it originated as a 5th century Gregorian chant. And so I have to believe that since the beginning of time, people have been able to see what I'm seeing, that people are surrounded by angels and deceased loved ones. But perhaps it took until the 5th century for someone to be well educated enough that they could write down something along those lines. And they chose to put it in the form of a chant, form of a prayer that was a chant. And certainly some of the most well-educated or learned people at that point in our history were men who were in monasteries and synagogues. They were the keepers of the records, they were keepers of the historical documents and all of that. And so I find that fascinating, and I believe people have been able to see this since the beginning of time. And as we've gotten more well educated, what's happened is we've shut down those intuitive abilities because we're looking for proof. Well, if there's not proof, I don't believe that. But now we have proof when we can tap into spirit and we get information, and then we get validation for the information we get.
Yeah, it's really sad that, you know, we have dumbed it down to we need to have this scientific proof, you know, otherwise it doesn't exist. So it's really sad that we've just become so constricted within our this physical reality, and you know, so many people just can't seem to fathom the idea that there is a possibility that there is other things that exist out there that we can't necessarily see with our eyes, but that nevertheless they exist. So yeah.
They're being led though by people like you who talk about it, who live your life. And people, I've had people over the years saying to me, well, you have to prove this to me. And I'll say, well, really, I don't. Either you're interested in it or you're not.
Yeah.
And then they go, okay, wait, well, okay. You know, and I'll start to disengage. Like, I really don't have to convince you, but if you're interested in discussing it, I'm happy to do that. And everybody's interested in it. What keeps them from exploring it is fear, because we've been so inundated about all these evil spirits and all this nonsense. Again, that's all been part of cultures and religions and civilizations using fear to control the masses. And evil spirits don't exist. All spirits are pure love. Any kind of snarky personality, you know, the person that we think the most horrific person, most people think of Hitler right off the bat. Well, all those awful character traits of Hitler from a human perspective stayed with Hitler's body when he died. His spirit was pure love. And that's a shift in a paradigm. That's a shift for us to try and get our human heads around. But all spirits are pure love, which is why when you're at a vibration level that matches spirit, you're pure love and joy, because that's what we are naturally.
Yeah, and I think it's very, like you said, it's very hard for some people to kind of understand this idea that how can this person that's done so many horrible things still, you know, be qualified to go to, you know, to heaven.
Yeah.
But,
We expect Hitler to be burning in hell for eternity because that's what we've all been taught, but it doesn't exist. And I think it was Pope John Paul II, when he was in office and still alive, that said, you know, this whole concept of some fiery pit that souls get thrown into doesn't exist. It's separation from God is what he called it. And I think that separation from God thing is all about the fear, because when we're living in line with what our spirit is, which is joy and happiness, which we all have the ability to do once we know the skill sets. And the skill sets involve what's a rational fear, what's an irrational fear. We talked about that earlier. I think it's a different way of looking at things that have been passed down through the generations. And my God, the Bible's been translated how many bazillions of times into how many languages. And I love to listen to Bible scholars talk about, okay, here's how it was originally written in Greek, and here's what it is today in English, which is not the same thing, not the same meaning as how it was originally written in Greek. So I think that's fascinating to be able to change your perspective when you know everything's unfolding perfectly. You cannot make a mistake. It's all part of the journey. Our journey is everlasting. Our spirit's everlasting. And time in the spirit world doesn't exist. That's a human invention. It's a human concoction. So a life of 100 years in our human existence may not even be a blip on the radar screen in the spirit world. So if we're eternal and we can't get anything wrong, it really makes things relax a lot. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
You know, the stress levels go way down.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it's, like you said, it's when the fear comes in, when people are trying to say these things to put us into that fear state, that's when the problems start to arise. And that's when you start to see, you know, people going in the wrong direction. And that's kind of what's happening now with everything, you know, there's so many things that are trying to keep us in that fearful state. And it's just only if we could manage to keep our frequency high and just know that, you know, whatever's going to happen is happening for a reason, and kind of, Yeah, I think it
Well,
will.
like with all this COVID stuff, I mean, there are amazing things that are happening that are benefiting us. My goodness, the Nightingale Hospital that was built in what, a week with 4,000 beds in the middle of London is, it's just miraculous. We had the same thing in New York. They came in, the army came in and they built 2,500 beds in 4 days. They built a hospital. I mean, it's just remarkable. And it's remarkable also that those hospitals have been barely used. You know, we had those numbers that were saying, oh my gosh, thousands, tens of thousands of people, if not millions of people can die from this. And it hasn't. So we know we can do it when we need to now. We know the capabilities are there. And thank you, God, that we didn't need them because, you know, we didn't have the numbers that we thought we were going to have. And thank God Boris is all better. And he was around to see his new baby be born. And I mean, my gosh, just all the amazing happenings that are going on with our government officials down to the local level, from the federal to the local. I watched the Queen give her address. I was in tears watching that. I mean, how touching was that? That
I didn't
she,
actually see that, yeah, but
oh, you need to go back and find that. It was great. It was wonderful. And how these countries are all working together, and the amazing things that manufacturers are able to do, and the advances in medicine that have come in a short amount of time. I, as a manufacturer and inventor of surgical devices, have dealt with these regulatory bodies in the US and other countries that I had to get my products approved to sell. They're a pain to deal with. I mean, they're a nightmare. So for our government officials to be able to get tests through those regulatory bodies, you know, they within a couple of weeks is incredible. It's just, I find that it's fascinating watching all the amazing things that are coming as a result of this.
Yeah, it definitely shows you what we're capable of if we tried a little harder.
And
Yeah.
everybody working together, and you know, Boris is calling Trump saying, hey, we need more ventilators. And so the US is sending ventilators over, and the car manufacturers are manufacturing ventilators.
Yeah.
Change
Yeah.
their
And I thought it was really nice. I think, was it from Japan that they sent rescue, doctors to Italy to
right.
help out? Yeah, that was pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
all
Yeah.
over. I agree.
Right. Do we have time for some questions?
Sure,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have one question about okay, so how do we reconcile a belief in existence after death with a belief in the existence of reincarnation? I find it hard to believe in one without believing in the other, but Christians do. Okay, well, they both exist, right? Because we do reincarnate after life, after we pass over.
We do. And that goes back to what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, Desi, about how things in the Bible have been edited, and in the translations, things have been lost. There are many references in the Bible to reincarnation, but most people aren't aware of it. And I am not a Bible scholar, but I've been in lectures with people who are Bible scholars, and they point that out. So the other thing to remember is that we're trying to make sense of it in our human minds, because that's what we have to work with, obviously. But if you remember that time doesn't even exist, it's not a thing at all in the spirit world, that 100 years, like I said, in a human life may not even be a blip on the radar screen. So we can reincarnate quickly. There are some schools of thought that we live multiple lives at the same time. Certainly when someone's in spirit form and non-physical, they can be many places all at the same time. So it's feasible to me that perhaps we can live multiple lives at the same time. I mean, that's getting pretty far out there for my little brain.
Yeah.
Little brain to try and understand, but certainly it's feasible. And we'll find out when we go back to non-spirit. You know, we can ask, when I ask, does a spirit have the ability to live multiple lifetimes at the same time? I get a yes. Now, for me to understand all the nuances of that, I'm not there, but I get a yes. So I hope that answers that person's question. Anything you want to add to that, Desi?
Well, no, it's pretty much what you just, well, from what I know, I think there was also some scientific research done on that they actually showed that we can exist in multiple dimensions. So,
I
which
think wasn't that Einstein's theory of relativity? Didn't that have to do with that?
something
I
like that.
think
But I know recently there was, in the last few years, there was also a few other people that came up, kind of said that that's possible, and we can do that. We can exist multidimensionally. And I've heard a number of people who actually speak about that, and they say that we do actually exist. We live in different dimensions, and yeah, I'm still quite not quite sure how it works, but yeah, I know it
and
has.
that's, and that's for really brilliant quantum physics
Yeah.
brains to try and
Mm.
distill to the point where as just a normal human can understand it. But I can tell you that I have seen past lives on different planets. That's pretty wild.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Wow. We
One
can
of
get
the guys, one of the guys who was in our first class, and we have a private Facebook group, everybody, that all the graduates and students interact on. You alluded to that earlier. He called into my show before he took my class, and he said, "Can you check and see if I was an engineer in a past life?" And I did, and I said, "Yeah," and it looked like a Star Wars set. I mean, it was like flying cars and stuff. It looked like the Jetsons. Did you see the Jetsons cartoon?
no.
You know what that is, but flying like spaceships and stuff. It looked like Star Wars. It looked like a Star Wars set. And I said, "Yeah, this is a different planet." And so I got that he was in charge of the power grid, and he was an engineer, and he was in charge of the power grid and all the electrical, all the solar stuff that powered the city, or the whatever you want to call it,
Wow.
the installation. I mean, whatever. It looked like a city to me, and all the vehicles and everything in the homes. And I said to him, "What kind of engineer are you?" And he said, "I'm an electrical engineer." I was going, "Well, there you go."
Yeah.
So yeah, so I have seen, that's just one example. I've seen past lives on different planets. The other thing that was really funny about that one in particular, and it's episode 31 on my show. I think I've done 206 shows now, but
A
it's
lot.
episode
Yeah.
31 if you want to go back and listen to it. And the guy's name's Musa, and he's from Senegal originally. But I said, "Musa, I think this is a future life," but it was 1930 something, I think.
Oh,
I mean, it was a past life, but it looked really futuristic to what our life is here on Earth. So I thought that was wild too.
yeah. So maybe a different dimension then.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, we have trillions of planets and stars and billions of solar systems. And I mean, the numbers are so big that I don't even remember them, but I know people that say, well, Earth is the only planet with
Yeah.
life. That's like, really?
Yeah.
How,
How special do you think we are?
well, I think it's just to think that out of the billions of, maybe even trillions of other solar systems that all have billions of planets,
Yeah. There's no
certainly
way.
it's feasible that there are lots of other life forms that
Yeah.
are on these
Oh
planets.
yeah, I totally agree. And there's plenty of people who've spoken about that. So yeah, I totally think that as well. Okay, another question we have from Laura. So how can we create new beliefs to break repeating patterns learned in early childhood? For example, using rejection as a redirection. Ah, okay. So how can we create new beliefs to break a repeating pattern? Oh, that's quite psychological, isn't it? Behavioral.
Do you want to take a stab at that first? Maybe
Oh,
we'll incorporate the 2-minute rule.
yeah, well, for me, well, first it's about recognizing that you have this repeating pattern that you don't really wish to continue with, and then recognizing where it's coming from. So I think normally we tend to take these patterns on from our parents or the people that we grew up with. So just recognizing that this isn't really our own pattern, but it's something that we've just inherited from watching people around us. And then I guess we can try to see what we would like to replace it with. So what would we prefer to have a belief as a new belief, or how is this a wrong belief? Because I guess, like you said before, if we look at it from a different perspective, then you have a different view on the situation. So I guess it's about changing your perspective on your belief, and maybe, yeah.
Right. So I teach this little trick called the 2-minute rule.
Yeah, I love
Desi
that.
knows this well. Every thought that we think, our heads are like big satellite dishes, and every thought that we think has a different frequency, and we pull thoughts in from the ethers. There are thoughts of, they're based on what we're thinking of right before. Because you'll get a thought like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get COVID. And if I get COVID, then there isn't going to be a hospital bed for me. And even if there is a hospital bed, there won't be a respirator, and I'm not going to be able to breathe. And then I'm going to be in the hospital. I'm not going to be able to see my loved ones. And you're down this black hole of these thoughts that you're making up, right? I call it MSU, making stuff up. You can substitute the stuff word for any word you want. It starts with an S, making stuff up. So what we want to do is we want to be able to differentiate between what's a rational fear and what's an irrational fear. Rational fear is something's going to kill us, so you better change the conditions. And irrational fear is it's not going to kill us, so we're making it up. And here's how you do it. Desi, chime in here because she knows this. She's had this hammered into her head. The trick I use is called the 2-minute rule. You ask yourself when you're feeling bad, because remember, when our spirit is in alignment, we're feeling good. We're feeling calm. We're feeling joy. We're feeling happy. When we feel bad, we feel mad, anger, sad, anxiety, whatever, stress. We're out of alignment with our spirit. So when we're feeling that way, we want to say, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? If it is, get out of the street before that truck runs you over and it's going to kill you. Anything that isn't going to kill you in the next 2 minutes is false. We're making it up. It's fake news. So as soon as you know that, what's happened is you've disrupted that train of thought, that frequency for that train of thought. So you ask, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? You're going to get an answer. A lot of the time you're going to chuckle because you're going to say, oh my God. No, I'm waiting in line for 20 minutes to get my groceries. No, it's not going to kill me in the next 2 minutes. The next question is, how is this benefiting me? And it's benefiting you in a whole bunch of different ways. It may be that you start talking to somebody behind you and you strike up a friendship that lasts. Perhaps you're waiting for somebody to show up and they're late, and when they show up they are so thrilled to see you that you just forget. But it feels bad when you're waiting because you're being impatient. But the thing at least that it's doing is it's pointing out a limiting belief, right, that's fake. And when we point those out, like beliefs from childhood that are not going to kill us in the next 2 minutes, we can discern what's a rational fear, what's an irrational fear. Because everything that feels bad, every emotion that feels bad is based in fear. It's always based in fear. So it's that saber-toothed tiger thing again. You get the lion out of your living room by being able to differentiate what's real, what's not real. And 99.9% of fears we make up in our heads, and we are down this black hole of all this stuff we've made up. And once you can do it, and Desi, we've practiced this a lot, it becomes a habit, and you do it fast, and then boy, you are able to get information that you can act on. That's when the magic happens. When we stay stuck in things that feel bad, we stay on a hamster wheel, and we keep getting the same experiences. So we want to be able to break that train of thought, and I call it the 2-minute rule. What do you want to say about the 2-minute rule? You had that hammered into you, didn't you?
Yes, in every class we were taught about the 2-minute rule.
It's the root of all of it.
Yeah,
it's the root of everything.
No, I love it, and I love how simple it is, and it only takes a few seconds for you to just put 2-minute rule, pull yourself out of it. It's like, oh, okay, because I've noticed, we're such habitual creatures, isn't it? We don't even realize what we're actually doing. And then it's only when you ask yourself that, where is my focus going right now? And you realize that, you're like, oh, okay, no, stop, pull back. And then after I do the 2-minute rule, I think to myself, okay, well, where would I rather have my focus go? And then I kind of, okay, my work or whatever. But yeah, it's so much, it's so helpful. It's so helpful.
And it's free, and it's convenient because it works wherever your brain is, and your brain's usually with you wherever you are. So, it's like the best of all worlds, the 2-minute rule.
Totally, yeah. And it's one of the simplest and most useful tools ever. So thank you so much for bringing that into my reality. We have another question from Carla, who's asking, how do you use your psychic ability to help your day-to-day life?
When I'm looking for guidance on something, I'll ask like, is it in my, and I always preface it with, is it in my best interest to, because I ask God, the universe, my spirit guides, my deceased loved ones, you meet everybody, and all universal intelligence. So is it in my best interest to take the highway or take side roads to get to someplace? And I'll get an answer immediately. And when you start using it, I always say, start with stuff that doesn't matter. Practice with it. Like, is it in my best interest to eat this chocolate chip cookie or this peanut butter cookie? I mean, really, in the scope of life, does it matter? No, but you're going to get an answer really fast. Yeah. Or I'll ask, is it in my best interest to pick this present for my son or that present? Which one will my son enjoy more? I mean, you can use it with everything.
It's so simple.
So you can use it's so simple, and you can use it with everything. The other thing is you can do it for other people. Like if I was asking something about you, is it in Desi's best interest too? Is it in Fluffy the dog's best interest too? Is it in Fluffy the dog's best interest to buy this kind of dog food for her or that kind of dog food? Yeah. But remember to be specific. Yeah. And you're going to get an answer. Boom. You can use it in all areas of your life all day long.
It's so useful, and I try to use that as well. Is it in my best interest too? And then I'll ask a question. Yeah. What I've noticed for myself, I guess it works differently for everyone, but for me, numbers, because numbers have a lot of meaning for me, so I do get answers in the numbers when I see numbers or repeating numbers somewhere, and for me that's a sign. So I think whatever works for you, your guides or spirit will use that channel or that way of telling you, giving you the answer. So if you don't trust yourself for what you're getting, maybe you'll get it in another, as a confirmation through another way.
Well, yeah, you mentioned before, you'll have a thought and then somebody will walk by you on the street and they'll say something that correlates with that thought. Absolutely, that's guidance. The number thing lets you know you're in alignment. When you see 1212 or 1111 or whatever those numbers are. And I think once you start noticing those kinds of things, it really, it's just magical. It has a magical component to it, and it just makes it fun. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. Even it's not, I think we tend to get so serious with all this woo-woo stuff and this psychic stuff, and it's a blast, isn't it? I mean, it's fun, it's joyful, it's be playful with it, use your imagination, trust you cannot make a mistake in anything in your life, ever. Ever. We think, oh my gosh, I wish I would have thought to do this other thing. Well, the way that it unfolded was perfectly, and it led you to where you are now, and you're creating out from that point, and that's perfect. That's where you can't get it wrong. Yeah. Any decision that we make in any area of our lives, ever. Yeah. Which, how much anxiety does that relieve?
I know, so much. Yeah, because we're obsessed with like getting it right or getting it wrong, and oh my god, if I get it wrong. So yeah, this definitely helps with that, I'd say, definitely. There was a question here asking if there is a process to open up your third eye, your communication, but I guess it's what you just said basically. So asking spirit and receiving an answer, but before that you have to be in the right frequency, right? So you have to make sure you get in the right state.
Not necessarily. I think you ask a question, you feel good. I mean, if you want to do this kind of work, you want to be at the super, super high vibrational level, but just walking around, everybody has the ability, and we're doing it. We're just not paying attention to the information we're getting. But the key is you want to feel calm or happy or, something that doesn't feel bad. If you're asking for advice when you feel bad, that's trying to change the conditions. And they're just going to stay on a hamster wheel with that. So you want to be calm, or you want to be at least in a good frame of mind to ask the question. Some people find that with meditating. Some people find meditation really hard, that they can't quiet their minds. And I think meditation is about noticing that the thoughts come in and out. And it's that little space in between those thoughts. And again, our head's a satellite dish, and we're pulling in frequencies of thoughts. But when we meditate, we know, okay, that thought came in, but I just let it go. And then another thought came in. I think it validates what we're doing, and it's those little spaces in between. I also think that something that we can do is, the more we do it, the easier it's going to be. And the more you do it, the more validation you're going to get for the information that you're getting. And then you're going to learn to trust it. It's similar to, I can teach you to play the piano and you can learn chopsticks on the piano, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be a concert pianist within a week. You want to just play with it with fun, have it be fun. You know, is it in my best interest to put on this pair of blue pants or this pair of red pants today? You're going to get an answer. Does it really matter? Probably not. But just have fun with it.
Fun. Yeah, exactly. And someone just said, thank you so much for the conversation. It has been super helpful and raised my vibration today.
That's right. Yeah. And people, and my podcast is available anywhere you download podcasts. And people tell me that all the time, Desi, is they if they're feeling bad, they'll just listen to my podcast and they'll say, I immediately feel better. And I'm not even paying attention to what you're saying or what the callers are saying. I just feel better. And it's because my vibration level is so cranked. And I'm scanning these people all over the world really fast, that I can't even tell you how many people have told me that over the years. So anywhere you get podcasts, if you're in a bad mood, put on my podcast and you'll match the vibration that's coming out from that show.
And it's so interesting. Yeah, I definitely recommend for anyone who wants to learn more about this stuff to visit the podcast, because it's called Ask Julie Ryan. So
Ask Julie Ryan. AskJulieRyan.com. Everything's Ask Julie Ryan. Instagram, Facebook, it's all Ask Julie Ryan.
Ask Julie Ryan. Yeah, and it's so interesting because you, so a lot of people calling, to ask questions like if you can scan them, if they feel like they have something like an illness or something, or to communicate with their disease loved ones. But I love how you describe what you're doing. So you're not only telling them and giving them an answer, but you're actually describing. So you can learn so much just through listening to the podcast and how to actually do that for yourself. So yeah, I find that really interesting.
People want me to scan their pets. They want love life advice. They want advice on, I'm thinking of moving to this new city or country. I'm thinking of doing this new job. What are my spirit guides telling me on this? It's all across the board, and every week it's different, which is what makes it so much fun.
It's so interesting. Yeah, definitely. Right. Let's see if there's any more. What about, okay, someone's asking about repeating numbers in science. Okay, we've covered that. What if our answer always pertains to free will? Sometimes I find some of my guides say yes and others disagree. Okay, so you have some guide. Well, then you would ask spirit, right? Not your guides or your guide, I guess, because if you connect with spirit, it will be, you're going straight to the source rather than asking your guide.
Spirit, I think of as this huge river of consciousness, and that includes God, all spirit guides, angels, deceased loved ones. I mean, it's just the whole group. And what I find is when you get conflicting answers, you want to be more specific in how you ask the question, because you want to refine it down. Spirit's always going to communicate telepathically, but you want to ask the question differently. Will I enjoy I think we talked about this. Will I enjoy the concert? Yeah. You get a yes. You go to the concert and you hate it. You're thinking, okay, guys, what's up with that? And versus if you would have said, will I enjoy the concert on Saturday, May 16th of 2020 at Wembley Stadium to hear the Rolling Stones? See how specific? That's so different how the question is asked, but the information you're going to get is going to be more applicable. It's going to be more usable because you've been more specific. So Spirit's always going to give us the correct answer. How useful it's going to be is how we ask the question. useful the information is we get. And you may remember in our class, somebody asked, I don't remember who it was, but they said, well, why doesn't spirit just know what our thoughts are? I mean, why do we have to be specific? And I thought that was a great question.
Yeah.
And you may remember my answer is spirit's not reading your mind. They're there to help, but we have to ask for their help.
Yeah.
You know, that we don't have kabillions of spirits that are reading our mind all day long, but we can call on them for help and they're going to give us guidance, but we need to be really specific because again, they're not reading our mind. Do you remember that question when it was asked, Desi?
Yeah, I can't remember who asked it, but yeah.
I don't either, but it was I thought it was a great question.
Yeah, definitely. That's yeah, and I think the tip about being very specific really helped me as well, because before I knew that, I would kind of just ask a question, but it will be very vague, and obviously then with whatever information you get, you can't really apply it. So yeah, being specific is important.
And the same pertains to our relationships with other humans. You know, I mean, we'll say something and we don't mean it in a malicious way, but somebody's feelings might be hurt as a result of whatever it is we say. So what we find is that if we can be specific, even when we're communicating, you know, with our fellow humans, it's the same thing. It's all open to interpretation. My goodness, the news, you know, you can have a news headline and it gets some people wound up and they're angry, and others are saying, well, what's the big deal? It's all perspective. It's all how we interpret, and spirits are the same way.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree. And you still
You
have
guys
to.
are really good on that, you know, inflaming people with your paparazzi and your, you know, your different media that you guys have. I mean, my goodness, you guys do it. You're the mountaintop as far as the, you know, the I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, the you know, the sensational magazines, the gossip magazines.
Yeah, to get the headlines, you know, going. Get the
I mean, I'm not talking about your normal mainstream like the Times and stuff. I'm talking about the, you know, the gossip magazines and what do you call that? Why can't I think of the word? I'll think of it in a minute.
The news, the headlines, the celebrity stuff, celebrity.
Yeah. You know, the gossip magazines, but
yeah,
that the paparazzi are in, you know, that they like the Mirror and the Sun and the that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah. The Mail on Sunday. Yes, we all know them.
You guys are the masters of that.
Oh God, yeah, we have some good ones. Well, I don't read them anymore, but yeah, they definitely get your attention if you see them somewhere. So yeah, they know how to do that. They're masters of that. We have one more question from David, who is asking, I access my clairvoyance through my dreams before I sleep at night. This is a bit deep, but can we construct our futures through our dream state instead of my dreams just predicting coming events? Oh, okay. So can you construct your future through your dreams? Interesting. I don't know.
Great question. The answer is yes. You can construct your future through your dreams and when you're conscious. Because again, it's about tuning your satellite dish head to the frequency of what you want. And you mentioned it earlier. You did a great job of saying, when I have something happening to me that I don't like, I change my focus. So you change your thoughts to whatever it is you want. I think as humans, we like, especially female humans. Now, David, you have an advantage over this, but you know, we women, we want to just repeat the same thing that we didn't like about something in our heads over and over and over and over again. Usually about love lives too, right? You know, we're like, this guy did this wrong, or you know, why did he do this? And then we try and analyze, what was he thinking? Why did he do this? I mean, please, so much of a waste of time when we learn how to do this. So what we want to do is we want to focus on what we want, not what we don't want. What we don't want lets us know what we want and what we want to create. And that's why we're here having this human existence, is to create. Because to spirit, everything's just an experience. They don't judge it as good or bad, but that's why we're here for spirit. It's fun to create things.
Mm.
And oftentimes I'll talk to people who say, well, when I have a negative thought, I'll just bless it and ask it to go away. Well, you're resisting that thought. You're still on the same frequency. You're still on that same radio station. What we want to do is we want to change the radio station to a different station of the station of what we don't want. We don't want to stay on that station, on that frequency. We want to change it to what do we do want? What do we want? And so, yes, you can do that in your dream state by focusing on it before you go to sleep at night. That helps tune your satellite dish head to that frequency. And when you wake up in the morning, there's a good chance that you're still on that frequency and you'll get guidance that comes in. Great question. But you don't have to be asleep to do it. Because when you're focusing before you go to sleep, you're awake, right? You're focusing on that, what I do want frequency. And then when you're asleep, you're already tuned to that station. So you're going to get more information. Great question, David.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice one. He's saying, thank you so much. Jacob just said there was a crazy energetic vibrational high that connected us all like about 3 minutes ago. I know everyone else felt it. Yeah, I actually, it's really weird. I saw twice now. I saw like this little bubble fly in front of me, and it's quite, yeah, I haven't had that before during an interview. So we're
Cool.
definitely high in the vibration.
And the cool thing about this too is whether somebody's what, are you taping this? You're taping this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
You'll play, people be able to get this on YouTube or wherever.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Whenever you watch it, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching the tape, you're going to get that same vibe. So
Mm.
it doesn't have to be live. And that's what's so cool about this is that that energy you can pick up whether you're watching this 5 years from now or whether you're watching it live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So whenever people come back to watch it again, they'll still feel the energy. So yeah, that's
That's
pretty.
right.
Yeah. And we have one more question. So Lonnie is asking whether if you're feeling any specific spirits being here right now with us, if you're picking up on any specific ones.
Oh yeah, there's tons of spirits around us all the time. You know this from taking my class. A lot of mediums will say, well, let's see who's around you. My feeling is let's cut to the chase. Who do you want to talk to? We bring them in. You know, if it's a deceased loved one, boom. As soon as we think of them, we're on their frequency of that spirit. You want to talk to Napoleon, you want to talk to Henry VIII. I mean, who do you want to talk to? Mother Teresa? Boom.
Yeah. Maybe we
Diana,
can.
we're, you know, boom, we're right there. We can pull in anybody we want, anytime we want, any spirit that's ever lived. We can pull them and they have the same frequency always. And that's how we connect with people who are alive. Like if I was going to do a medical scan on you, my spirit's connecting to your spirit. I watch a laser beam cross the Atlantic and come from the southern part of the US and Alabama, you know, northeast up to you in London. And I'm on your spirit's frequency, which is how I'm able to see what's going on in your body. Because again, your body's inside your spirit, but it's all holographic. So yeah, there's just, you know, tons of spirits around us all the time. Is there somebody in particular with whom she wants to connect?
She hasn't said. So Lonnie, if there's anyone specific that you want to connect with, now is your time to ask.
Yeah.
And anyone else. I know Julie, I know you probably have to go because we've had you here for probably, yeah. But it's been amazing. I can speak about this stuff for like a whole day. So
Right, right.
Let's see. Lonnie, is there any specific spirit that you want to communicate with or connect with? But this has been fun. Very, very fun.
She can
Wow.
send a question to my website, askjulieryan.com. People submit questions all the time, and then I pick one each week and read it on the show, and it goes out in my blog as well. And she can call into the show. You've done that. It's in the middle of the night for you guys. I do a live recording every Thursday night at 7 Central, and you're 6 hours ahead of me. So what is that? Yeah. That's 1 o'clock in the morning, I think, your time.
For us, yeah.
And so that's fun, and it's just all available. And you guys can do this with Desi now too, because she can do all this stuff that I do.
Although I still haven't practiced as much.
Any of you that are watching, are listening, we all have the ability to do this. And so it's just a matter of learning how to utilize the skills we all have. We all come in, we all can throw a ball,
Yeah.
whether we're gonna be a professional athlete or not, depends on practice, but we all have the ability. And
Yeah.
it's the same with this.
Yeah, and hopefully after this session, people will have a much bigger understanding of exactly how they can do that for themselves. So yeah, that's been pretty nice. Okay, so Lonnie hasn't commented, so I'm guessing there's no specific person she wants to speak to. Do you want to take? Oh, she just said her mother.
Does she have a question? Does she have a question for her mom?
Okay, Lonnie, do you have a specific question, or do you just want to connect with your mom and see what message she brings? Okay, let's see what she says. Jacob just saying, thank you so much, lovely discussion.
So what came in from Lonnie's mom, Desi, is she needs to get her teeth checked. She needs to go see the dentist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That
Okay.
just came in from her. What I did was I connected from you to Lonnie.
Oh, really?
Mom was standing right next to her, and I said, "You got anything you wanted to know?" And she said, "Yes, she needs to go to the dentist."
Oh, well, there you go. That's your message. I guess she needed to hear that. Wow. Okay. Thank you for that.
You're
Right.
welcome.
Do you want to take one more question, or should we wrap it up? I know
I need to run, but
yeah.
what a treat to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julie. This has been such a treat again. And if you guys haven't seen our previous session, which was about 2-3 months ago, in I think February, January, yeah, you can go back on my channel and watch that. Otherwise, feel free to join Julie's sessions every Thursday, her podcast, where again you can ask as many questions as you want. You can call in and ask her questions. She does them every Thursday. And to find out more information on that, you can go on her website, askjulieryan.com. As well as if you want to read her book, Angelic Attendants, I'd highly recommend it. And I think you have more classes coming up, don't you?
I do, yes. The next one starts July 11th.
Yeah.
And it's half full already. So if you're thinking of doing it, join us. And then there will be another one in the fall sometime. I haven't figured out what the dates are. Probably late September-ish, maybe mid-September to mid-October-ish.
And
I do
amazing. As I said before in the beginning of it's just been incredible doing this class, and it just makes you realize how easy it actually is to do this stuff. And it's really, really incredible.
And then we all stay in touch. Everybody that's been through the class, we stay in touch with monthly get-togethers on Zoom, which are fun. And then we have a Facebook page where you have mentioned that, where we're all interacting, which is fun too. And it's fun to see people from different classes that are interacting with each other and getting to know each other. And it's and from a bunch of different countries too. Like I said, you got to speak English, but you're probably not listening to this show if you don't speak English.
Yeah, but it's a really nice little community, and you can continue with your practices as well. So a lot of us have continued to do these practices because of course we don't want to forget. And it's been amazing. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Julie, thank you so much again for this session, and it's been fascinating. And again, with everyone who's just confirmed they've had an amazing time. So thank you so much.
Big kisses to all of you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.